Louisiana versus all y'all. Another episode of what again we're starting to call recruit that boot. Jared Roser here with Sam Spiegelman. It's been probably about a week and a half, a big week and a half for you. You had a chance to go visit some family, niece's second birthday. You got a fun Seinfeld Drake Kendrick gift from me at some point while you're out of town. But Sam, good reconnecting with you. Love the Easton shirt, the Easton Battle vibe shirt. I like that a lot, man. What's up?
Yeah, 3019 strong, man. Great to see you. Yeah, week off to go see my favorite niece, to get back home to New York. And like you said, I mean, we had all the pop culture that I needed between Seinfeld and Kendrick just dominating Drake, and I mean, it was a pretty eventful week, all things considered. Even though we didn't get a chance to hop on the pod.
To clarify, you only have one niece, I assume, because you called her your favorite. I'd get in trouble if I said my favorite niece about one of my two. Would not hear the end of that.
Yeah, my sister gives me a lot of back talk about, like, oh, she's your favorite because she's your only niece. Well, you know what? I could just say she's my niece. I mean, I added the favorite to accentuate how much I love her. You'll see behind me. This is her portrait that I just framed for these podcast recordings. I mean, if that doesn't demonstrate my love, I don't know what does.
Maybe we can start each week. We can focus on one new item behind you and what the significance is for you. But jumping into some of this football recruiting stuff, we're going to talk a lot about spring ball. We talked a little bit about it already, but we're kind of right at the heat of it, and I'll be hitting some notable spring games around Louisiana the next couple days. But before we get into that kind of bigger picture where we are in the calendar, one of the newsier elements we have is James Simon, a guy we've talked about a ton. He set a commitment announcement date for later on this month, and he's somebody that I think if folks have watched a couple of these convos, they've probably gotten a sense over the span of three conversations a month ago or so that it started to seem like he might be trending a little bit elsewhere from LSU, or that at least the confidence level for LSU fans should probably be slipping a little bit. What's kind of the latest for you on James and your expectations for him? He has a top 5 now. The Tigers still in it, but I'm not overly optimistic that purple and gold is the hat or whatever he's pulling out at the end of the month.
Yeah, James set his commitment date for next Wednesday at noon Central Time. He's going to choose between Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Alabama, and LSU. Listen, for the bulk of his recruitment, I would say he was a bit of an LSU lean, but I think that the original plan was for him to take all of his official visits and then make a decision before he and Calvary attempted to repeat as state champions this fall. That timeline got morphed a little bit after some really important visits over the course of the spring. That includes multiple trips to Texas, and then after his second visit this offseason, he set the date. He also set his official visit to Texas for June, which was a bit telling. Right now, I like where Texas stands. Of course, he's been to Notre Dame quite a bit, and they have a fantastic class they're building in South Bend. And James has been at the top of that list for a while. He made his way to Alabama to meet Kalen DeBoer and reconnect with Coach Gillespie over there, who was recruiting him when he was on Saban's staff. A&M has always been a thorn in James's recruitment. He's originally from the state of Texas, even though he's obviously famous now for what he's doing out there in the 318. And he's been back to LSU, but of course, as we spoke about, Jarrett, LSU now has a backfield commitment tandem of Harlem Berry, the number one running back in the country, and JT Lindsey, a guy you and I are both really high on out of Alexandria Senior High. I think basically from the commitment of JT to LSU and Coach Choice and the Texas staff, which has a lot of Louisiana ties between Brandon Harris and Terry Joseph, and Tashard Choice has been recruiting the best backs in the country since he's been in Austin. I think momentum really started to flow toward the Longhorns, and I think after that second visit this spring, when he said that maybe he's closer to a decision than he isn't, it's been Texas's race to lose, at least in my opinion. And I think that he's going to announce in a few weeks. But I'm not sure his recruitment will necessarily be over from that standpoint. But I do like where Texas stands at the tail end of a very eventful spring. What's been your take, Jared?
Yeah, I think the more around that week in which JT picked up the offer on Monday or Tuesday and then committed on Saturday, the more I heard kind of in the wake of that was that it seemed like there was a little bit of a, whether it be a disconnect and James and the Simon family, or just James starting to lean more toward Texas. Some of what was going on at that time, we were seeing kind of on the front end of the JTZ recruitment picked up so rapidly. I think, that a lot was going on behind the scenes on the Simon recruitment. And I agree with you that I expect Texas is kind of what I think the announcement ends up being. And then obviously we have a long way to go before anything gets signed at the end of the year. But I think the Longhorns have positioned themselves really well and kind of taken the lead right now. And, we have a little bit of time before he makes that announcement too. We've seen how fast some things, schools kind of posturing leading up to announcements. But my expectation at the moment is that it's a Texas move. And I'm curious for you too. We talked around the time of that JT commitment announcement about the potential of LSU a year removed from taking the one running back commitment. Would they take three this year? If James is heading to Austin, potentially is in Baton Rouge, do you still think the Tigers potentially add a third running back in this 25 class to Harlem Berry and JT Lindsay? Or how do you kind of see that shaping up if that's the way things go regarding James?
That's an excellent question, especially because, again, as we've spoken about, 2025 is a tremendous cycle in Louisiana in terms of running backs. I think we've estimated it to be six Power Four running backs, at least off the top of my head. Yeah, well, listen, in the transfer portal era, attrition is inevitable. After only signing Caden Durham, who's going to be on campus, I imagine, in the next couple of weeks. I think Frank Wilson and LSU would love to sign three if possible. I think if it lends itself to that opportunity, I'd be curious to see which one of these other Louisiana backs would be their choice. You have Jasper Parker from Shaw, you have Deshaun Ford from Opelousas. Um, I think that obviously, if they could, they would have taken
Say Nate,
James.
say
And then listen, Nate
say Nate,
Shepard.
throw him in there.
Of course. Listen, Nate Shepard, and we possibly would have been talking about his older brother Will Shepard now in Colorado if we saved my five stock up candidates for this episode. But Nate Shepard offers a different sort of skill set. If you're going to take JT Lindsay and Harlem Berry, and the possibility of a James Simon would be three different backs that LSU could take and add to their backfield. And I think that with the wealth and disparity and the types of different backs that are in the state for this cycle, you could still have a three-prong backfield. You could add a Deshaun Ford as a bruiser that could obviously maybe transition to linebacker down the road like Devin White did. You could take a Jasper Parker, who is, again, another traditional three-down back in the same mold as a James Simon. Or you can add a Nate Shepard, who is explosive and a scat back and can also catch passes at a really high level. And obviously contribute in a multitude of other levels on offense, but also in special teams. So, just to circle back to James Simon, I think we touched on it and it kind of hit me when I said it. He views himself as a three-down back. He's a top 100 prospect in the country. And I think that, I don't think that he was very keen on going into a three-back class with LSU. Texas already has a commitment from in-state running back Ricky Stewart. He was previously committed to SMU. I got to see him in the state championships in Dallas, and he's a really impressive back as well. But I think James Simon likes the idea to be that featured back in Texas's class, which I think obviously bodes well for them ahead of this May 29th announcement and possibly down the road. Whereas I'm not sure if LSU will go in the direction of adding a third back, but if they do, you have to kind of like the idea of a three-down back in the James Simon mold, right?
Yeah, I think these guys all, and you kind of listed off some of their different attributes and strengths. I think so many of them bring a little bit of a different flair to a potential running back room. And so as much as we talk about Harlem's there and JT's there, that's two track fast guys. Harlem, we watched, look like a 5-star receiver out at that OT7 event. He's somebody that's going to be able to get his touches in a lot of different ways. And so, a lot of guys want to be a part of a one back or two back class, but if you bring a Deshaun Ford or a Jasper Parker in particular, those two into the mix, they're bringing very different um, you know, attribute sets, skill sets, body types into that group compared to JT or certainly Harlem. And so I think there's room in a 2024 and beyond offense to find ways to utilize all those guys and get them their touches, even if it's not traditionally handing the ball off and powering it between the tackles for all three of them.
No, I agree. What's been your favorite part of the spring so far, Jarrett? Let's stick with the spring topics.
Yeah, I think we were both. We know it's okay. We've hit the running backs pretty heavily. It's time to transition to spring. I'll be heading 2 hours down to Destrehan and Carr's spring game. You got the Easton shirt on. They just wrapped up their spring with a 14-7 spring game win against Covington a couple days ago. And we've talked a little bit about it. It's a really fun time of the football calendar year that I think when I was first starting out, I kind of brushed off a little bit as a little bit of an afterthought of there's no games coming up. There's so many other things going on the sports calendar as a whole, like how much of a priority was spring football. And as I've gotten a little bit older, it really is one of the more fun times of the year because there's not an immediate game, an immediate opponent on the schedule. You can kind of go, it's a little bit more relaxed, spend some time catching up with the coaches, seeing some young, talented kids for the first time. I had a chance on the Louisiana versus All Y'all channel to post I think it's his first interview, Jaden Miles, the 2027 running back from Catholic BR that we both saw last spring a little bit of. And so chatted with him a week and a half ago or so. And then 2 days later, he picked up his first offers from Florida State and Ole Miss. And so springtime is the perfect time to see some of those guys that are just kind of like finding their way into the depth chart and about to break out in a few months and get to spend some time with them before their recruitment and their high school careers really hit their stride. And so it's definitely a time of year that I know we both look forward to these days.
Yeah, kind of to piggyback off of what you said. When you go visit, high school programs and talk with coaches in the summertime, you talk to them during the season. There is a game that is whether it's 30 days away or 3 days away or 3 hours away. That game is first and foremost. But when you come in the spring, um, one you're either talking to state champions who are coming off of a really great season and they're either reloading or trying to find the missing links to make another run, or you're talking to some coaches who've had a lot of time to do some roster evaluations and take a closer look at their young talent or their upcoming seniors and juniors. And from our perspective, and obviously being so dialed in from the recruiting side, you love the opportunity to not just meet some of the young guys like the Jaden Miles, or I think back so long to when Jamar Chase was a freshman at Rummel, and Jay Roth told me, yeah, that kid might be pretty good, and then he had 180 yards in the spring game from Chase Forcade. So, and that was with Christian Fulton in the opposing secondary. Um, just instances like that where it's a little bit more of a lax atmosphere, and with less focus on a game or a competition or a deadline rather. It's just more time to really get to know the kids, get to see some of their skill sets in different settings and spend more time around them, and kind of get as much information that you can kind of stow away and you file away and you try to get back in the fall, or you try to see them at a camp again. And it applies to the Jamar Chases of the world, the Clyde Edwards-Hilairs of the world, the Jaden Miles of the world who we're talking about. Once upon a time, I got to see Arch in his first spring game, and that was, he was still competing for the job at the point. I mean, it's just a valuable time of the year. You also, not only with the high school coaches and parents and players, but college coaches are back around, and you kind of get, you get another perspective on a lot of the guys that you're seeing with your own eyes, try to see where they stack up from a college coach's perspective, and if you guys are lockstep, or kind of fine tune your own evaluation skills.
Yeah, that's something that stood out. I mentioned I'll be hitting this Destrehan Carr spring game this evening, and that's one that we were both at last year. That it was like a college coach bonanza over there with the amount of programs that were represented. Checking out those two powerhouses from Southeast Louisiana, Julie, our girl Julie Baudouin, who we worked with at multiple stops along the way, I think snapped a picture. Might have been you. One of you guys snapped me, a Tulane assistant, an LSU assistant, and a Louisiana Tech assistant all standing alongside each other watching that spring game play out. And it's just kind of cool elbows with those guys in, again, a lower pressure time of their year in a lot of ways, where you can kind of catch up a little bit. Um, and then, seeing some of the for me, seeing coaches from out of state that we end up crossing paths quite a bit over the course of a couple different stops, and joke with each other like, who's following who at to go check out talent from around Louisiana, is a lot of fun, and kind of leads right into some of this summertime is more of the same. You mentioned the off season in general. I enjoy going to hit some of those high school 7-Elevens, and then maybe a free afternoon to go hop in the pool after a hot, catching up with all this football stuff, and kind of have the best life balance time of the year. Probably is this football off season, where you're still getting that work done, but get a chance to do some other things.
Yeah, it's like I said, I've been doing this for so long that I can't imagine not doing it with spring football. This was the first year, as I prepared to change jobs, that I didn't get to go out to the spring. There's obviously a bevy of spring events and camps and whatnot that I've been fortunate enough to attend and get to. But I definitely can tell you, from not being able to get out to the spring for the first time in maybe 8 or 9 years, probably probably since I was covering Leonard and Jamar's Springs so many years ago. Uh, it's definitely something that I feel like it's just a vital component of the recruiting calendar. But obviously, we're about to get into it. The summer is also equally as important nowadays, and the fall might be the busiest time of the year, but it's also probably the most crucial. So let's kind of dive. Let's follow that. Let's talk about little summer.
Yeah, I guess let's save have some guys in mind as potential notable stock risers this offseason, that let's save that for next week and kind of really dive into where all these guys stand in their recruitments, what we're seeing from them. A little tease there with the legal pad, and do a full episode on some notable stock risers to keep an eye on. But I mentioned the high school 7-on-7 season for some of those high school teams sharpening their time. We did want to hit on some of the camps, the off season too, particularly getting into the summer, and we're about to hit a few weeks where there's a lot of kind of third party camps and different things going on. Both some of kind of the tail end of some media outlet and apparel company camps, as well as just some kind of one-offs around the state and around the region, and then we get into obviously the summer camps for the colleges themselves, end of May and early June. When you're how to build a schedule for these kids and families, we both get asked a lot, where should they be trying to get? What is the best bang for their buck, maximize their time and their resources and whatnot? How do you look at, what is a way that you, if we're talking about Sam Spiegelman, four-star prospect coming out right now, where you're trying to get to, or Sam Spiegelman, parent of a young prospect, how do you kind of approach this stretch that we're about to hit?
Yeah, I'll give you the media standpoint, and I'll also give you the advice that I've given to parents over the years. Let's start there. First of all, if you're the parent, it's the summertime it's valuable, but it's only so many weekends that you actually get out of the entire year before you're back in school and back to football activities. So I think the first is, like, you don't have to go to every camp that you're invited to. You need to sit down with your kid, your student athlete, determine which coaches are actually invested in you, which ones were coming by the school all spring, which ones have already formed a relationship with you, which ones you have an actual offer from, and which ones are you actually interested in attending. From that point on, that brainstorming session is over. Which ones are realistic for us to attend to? Again, college camps are the most important, and largely you'll know the important college camps to attend, whether your parents are helping you, whether your high school coaches are pushing you towards that. But, like, it's a big part of it is the relationship you have with those coaches. Everyone wants the camp invitation from Alabama and LSU and Texas and so on and so forth. But if they're not really recruiting you, are you just trying to chase an offer, or do you really have a legit chance of playing for Alabama or LSU or Texas? So, if you're getting recruited really hard by this school, but they still want to see you camp and you have a great relationship, then I think it's a no-brainer. That's where you want to go camp this summer and explore the campus, see what it's like to get coached by those coaches, and of course, you're trying to hit as many as possible. So you have to kind of find the right way to make it feasible from a schedule planning standpoint. But I think that people, from outside of college camps, from the media perspective, I'm getting excited to get to LSU at a certain point in June to see all the players in Louisiana. I'm excited to get to OT7 because, as you know, they feature some of the best players in the country on one field at a time. Also excited to get to other places with similar the third party camp is where it gets a little bit tricky, and I'm gonna defer to you in a second. People love to Photoshop, different media companies that are attending. They love to ask you for money to come attend and support their cause, but there is no guarantee, and there is no guarantee that anything comes from these camps other than you attending and paying to attend. Offers don't usually come that way. That's not how. I don't know who's telling you that that's how the process works. There are opportunities to get exposure at random camps when you run a fast time or you make a couple of great plays in one-on-one settings. But the truth is, if you want a college scholarship, you need to go to a college campus where coaches are asking you to work out in front of them because they have the power to offer you, not go to a third party that's using media and money to try to get you an offer. That's where I'll digress, Jared, and hand it over to you.
Lord, I don't know what you're trying to set me up for here, or who we might tick off. But I certainly echo a lot of your sentiments. I tell kids and parents all the time, prioritize the actual college camps where you're going to get in front of the people that have that power to offer you. I tell folks a lot of times too that this isn't always the case, but I think more often than not, your recruiting process becomes almost like a game of dominoes. And if you're not a guy that is already being heavily recruited by an Alabama or an LSU, don't spend your entire summer schedule only hitting the premier programs in the country. Try and build some level of momentum. If you're someone that doesn't have an offer and the recruiting process is a little bit slow for you overall, don't overlook getting to some other, whether it be a group of traditional group of 5 level camp or some of the FCS camps around the state and around the region. And that's also one reason why I love LSU's camps in early June, because you get kind of a one-stop shop where all of the Louisiana colleges have representatives there. And so even if you don't get that LSU offer, you have a chance, you may pick up a Raging Cajuns offer or a McNeese or Louisiana Tech, or we see guys pick up several offers over the course of several Louisiana college coaches. And similar to what you said, man, beyond the actual on-campus college hosted events, it just gets kind of tricky to figure out which places are the best to go. I think there's always some benefit in going out, competing, getting some work in, potentially, getting a 40 time out there, getting a little highlight play out there. And so even though it's not as direct a line to that offer, I think there's the potential of some value there, but it might hit or miss. And you mentioned sometimes they throw one of our logos on a graphic to go to some of these, and it's a camp that no one has asked us to go to or mentioned to us at all, let alone gotten confirmation that we plan to be there. And so that's kind of frustrating, some of the misleading element to that. I think there's almost just like a stock we're hosting a camp template that they throw all of the logos on there by default. And so that gets kind of frustrating from our side, and I'm sure from the parents and kids side as well. And I hope that kids would feel comfortable, I guess, if they see something, and part of why they want to go is they're hoping that we're going to be there, that someone would read and ask, and hopefully we see that message and can kind of confirm or deny that, because it is kind of tough to judge just off of that graphic. And I'm
Which graphic are you
in
talking
particular
about?
trying to get. I mean, it's every year, multiple every year. And I, as much as I've tried to get out to as many different things through the years, regardless of who's hosting, just, for me, another opportunity to go highlight kids regardless of what the setting is. I think I am trying to get a little bit more particular and intentional about, some of my time rather than running myself in the ground. Sometimes for me to go to an event where it's disorganized or it becomes more of an ego show of a coach that wants to be in front of the cameras and, seems like they're trying to almost block shots that I'm getting is because they want to make sure they're in the middle of everything. And so I'm trying to do a better job on my end of getting a little bit of a read on some of that and picking my spots a little bit and make sure that the places I'm going are the places that the kids are being kind of put on the platform first and foremost. And it's, the priorities are in line, but it's tricky sometimes for us to weed through some of that. So I certainly don't envy the kids and parents and figuring out what their schedule looks like with regards to some of those events as well.
Yeah, and this is a little, I'll leave it at this is you talked about the way that Louisiana is structured. When Coach Fritz and Coach Orgeron teamed up to do statewide camps, where UL and Coach Napier and La Tech everyone was on camp on all these different campuses evaluating the state. I think that has been it's been fantastic for the state for the
Yeah.
past half decade plus at least. It's probably been going on even longer at this point. Everyone has to camp. That's another thing that I would love to say. Derek Stingley Jr. had to camp at LSU as a freshman. He had to camp at Alabama and Florida and Texas. Brian Thomas got offered before he played a varsity down of football and still had to camp. And listen, even if you are going into your senior year, and like that was kind of the message I was going at before, where go where you're being recruited. If you're an underclassman, just kind of getting a taste of this, and you think that you're going to play Power Four or that's the goal, when you're as an underclassman, I would go travel across the South or across to all the campuses that you want to see and work out and try to gauge where you fit in for your age range, for your classification, and see what the coach's feedback is for you, and then you can adjust. I remember when Walker Howard was waiting behind Caleb Holstein, he was hitting the camp circuit. He got his LSU offer before he started a game. He got his Ole Miss and Alabama and Texas A&M offers, and that was Walker Howard's process. And then by the time he was committed, it was, you can go work out at whatever school you were committed to. Everyone's process is different. I probably say that at least 3 different times a day. Doesn't mean that anyone is right or wrong. Everyone's process is different. So whether you're an underclassman or a soon to be senior, or you're already committed, or you're getting pushed out of your class, or your coaches are pushing you to work out before and can commit, take it with a grain of salt, evaluate all your options and try to make the best decision possible, because everyone is in a precarious spot. It's just about how you deal with it. And a lot of that is knowing all the options in front of you.
Yeah, you can't overly worry about what is going on for any other individual, whether, one of your teammates or 7-on-7 teammates or another guy you see from elsewhere in the state or around the country, because you mentioned everyone's process is different. And at the end of the day, signing out of high school, you just need the one offer. And so you might not have the 40 off and a bunch of early offers, and some of those early offers you're seeing other guys get might not even be committable by the end when it matters anyway. You just need to make sure that you're kind of controlling what you can control, attacking your process to the best of your ability of your process, and let some things fall into place. I'm glad you mentioned the Tulane side of partnering with some of those camps, because they've done a really good job where you see a lot of coaches from around the state. Certainly the LSU coaches down there at Ullman Stadium for some Tulane camps as well. And you mentioned, being active as an underclassman on the camp circuit. I think in terms of gauging where you are, as well as the standpoint of get some early jitters out, where when it's really crunch time for you that summer between junior and senior year, or even to some degree, in particular at the quarterback position, that summer between sophomore and junior year, the more experience you have in some of those settings and a feel for here's the competition level and here's kind of the flow, the process, just feeling comfortable and confident because you have some of that experience already behind you in some early camp visits as a youngster, I think helps set you up for that much more success to go in and kind of hit when you're able to get there when it matters that much more.
I agree.
Cool. Dude, I think we hit it, man. So again, thank you for your time. you for the dope Easton shirt that gets to kind of help kick off my and smile a little bit. 3019 Canal. And as I mentioned before, make sure that folks that are watching, you check out next week. We'll have some notable stock runs this off season from around Louisiana. Sam's got he had his little list pretty ready to go today, I think. And so we'll have a
Took
little
me
bit
about
more
20
chance to
minutes. I've been thinking about it.
dive into those in depth a little bit more next week. Again, he's Sam Spiegelman. I'm Jarrett Roser for Louisiana versus all y'all, and this new Recruit That Boot show. We're kind of getting off the ground. Thank you all for watching, and look forward to chatting again next week.